commuter train in Barcelona is struck by a collapsing wall. Just 48 hours earlier, at least 42 people died in one of Spain's worst rail disasters in decades. Two catastrophic failures in 2 days. Is this a tragic coincidence, or the symptom of a much deeper systemic crisis in European infrastructure? Some say it's a wake-up call for urgent investment. Others argue it's a predictable result of privatization and neglect. Who's right? And what does it mean for the safety of millions of passengers across the continent? To understand the magnitude of this moment, we need to rewind. The scene, southern Spain, Sunday, January 18, 2026. Evening. A high-speed train operated by the private company Ureo on the popular Malaga to Madrid route, carrying 317 passengers. Near the town of Adamas, just north of Cordoba, something goes catastrophically wrong on a straight section of track. The train derails at high speed. The impact is described as extremely violent. Bodies are found hundreds of meters from the wreckage. The confirmed death toll, at least 40. Dozens more are critically injured. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez declares 3 days of national mourning. Now, fast forward to Tuesday, January 20th. As a nation is still reeling, a commuter train in Barcelona, the bustling capital of Catalonia, a city of 1.7 million with a metropolitan area of over 5.7 million, is hit by a falling retaining wall. Details are still emerging, but the imagery is shocking. This isn't a remote high-speed line. This is the daily lifeline for thousands of workers, students, and families. The central tension is immediate and stark. On one side, a government and operators pointing to new trains and recently laid track, suggesting a freak, isolated technical failure. On the other, growing public fury and expert concern asking if years of cost-cutting, complex public-private partnerships, and deferred maintenance have created a ticking time bomb. This is the debate that will define Spain's transport policy for years to come. The official narrative, from the Spanish government and the involved rail companies, leans heavily on the modernity and reliability of Spain's rail network. Supporters of this view argue these are two separate, tragic, but ultimately isolated incidents. Proponents point out the specific facts of the Adamas crash. Spain's transport minister, Oscar Puente, noted it was strange for such an accident to occur on a straight section of track that was only laid in May 2025. The train itself was relatively new, built in 2022, operated by the private firm Ureo, which competes with the state-run Renfe. Alvaro Fernandez Heredia, president of Renfe, even stated that human error had been practically ruled out early in the investigation. The implication is clear. The cause likely lies with a specific, unforeseen fault in Ureo's rolling stock or a highly unusual infrastructure flaw, a one-in-a-million failure. For the Barcelona incident, initial reports will likely focus on localized factors, a unique structural weakness in that specific retaining wall, perhaps unusual weather conditions. The argument here is that Spain, particularly under the previous Sanchez administration, invested heavily in its rail. Its high-speed network is one of the most extensive in the world. The systems are modern. The safety protocols are stringent. This side argues that leaping to conclusions about systemic failure is irresponsible and alarmist. They contend that thorough, transparent investigations, which Prime Minister Sanchez promised, will reveal specific, correctable technical causes. The call is for patience, not panic. The underlying belief Spain's rail infrastructure is fundamentally sound, a point of national pride, and these events, while horrific, are statistical anomalies in an otherwise safe network. But wait, there's another side to this story. Critics, however, see it very differently. They look at two major incidents in 48 hours and see a pattern, not a coincidence. Opponents counter that this is the predictable result of systemic pressures, aging infrastructure, the complex fragmentation of services due to privatization, and the relentless drive for profit and efficiency over absolute safety. The other side argues that the introduction of private operators, like Ureo, into a system, long dominated by Renfe, creates coordination gaps and diluted accountability. Is maintenance on privately operated trains held to the same unforgiving standard? Are inspection regimes perfectly harmonized between multiple companies using the same tracks? Skeptics point out that private firms answer to shareholders, and while safety is paramount, the pressure to maximize rolling stock utilization and minimize downtime is immense. Furthermore, what about the broader infrastructure? Spain's rail network isn't just its shiny new high-speed lines. It's decades-old commuter lines, tunnels, bridges, and retaining walls, like the one in Barcelona. Has investment in maintaining this existing, critical backbone kept pace with the glamour of building new lines? Critics argue it has not. They see deferred maintenance as a silent crisis. The Barcelona wall collapses for this side a potent symbol. It wasn't a high-speed derailment from a complex cause. It was a wall, a basic piece of civil engineering falling onto a track. This speaks to a possible failure of routine, mundane, but vital inspection and upkeep. It suggests a system where visible, new projects get funding, while the unglamorous work of preservation gets shortchanged. But not everyone agrees on where the blame lies. Some point the finger at past policy. Others look at current pressures. So who's right? Let's look at the evidence. Stepping back from the claims and counterclaims, what does the broader context tell us? The data suggests several uncomfortable truths. First, international comparisons are revealing. Look at Japan, as per our sources. In the wake of the 2011 Fukushima disaster, it shut down the world's largest nuclear plant. Now, after a 15-year shutdown and rigorous safety overhauls, it's preparing to restart it. This shows a model, a catastrophic failure, a period of intense scrutiny and investment in safety, and a cautious return. Germany, conversely, shut down all its nuclear plants. Different nations, different risk calculations. For Spain's rail, the question is whether the response will be Japan's path of deep systemic review or something less. Second, expert analysis often notes that major transport disasters are rarely caused by a single point of failure. They are typically the result of a Swiss cheese model, where multiple small, latent failures in an organization's defenses line up to allow a catastrophe. 2 major incidents in 2 days strongly suggest there are multiple holes in that cheese. Third, the statistics on infrastructure investment in Europe post-2008 financial crisis and post-COVID show a mixed picture. While EU recovery funds have allocated money for green transition and digital projects, the sheer scale of Europe's aging infrastructure needs often outstrips available funding. The evidence shows that maintenance backlogs are a chronic issue across the continent, from bridges in Italy to railways in the UK. Experts note that the true test won't be the initial investigation reports, but whether they lead to a fundamental re-evaluation of funding models, regulatory power, and the balance between public oversight and private operation. The data on rail safety in Spain has been historically good, but as these events show, past performance is no guarantee of future safety. The reality is more complex than either side wants to admit. It is entirely possible that the Adamas crash was caused by a specific, catastrophic fault in a new train, and the Barcelona incident by a uniquely weak wall. Isolated tragedies can and do happen, even in the best systems. However, what most people miss is the psychological and political impact of the proximity of these events. The Barcelona collapse, regardless of its specific cause, will now be viewed forever through the lens of the Adamas disaster. It has shattered public confidence. That loss of trust is itself a systemic crisis. A safe system requires not just to be safe, but to be perceived as safe by the public who use it. The uncomfortable truth is that both sides are likely partially correct. There may well have been specific technical failures. And those failures may have been allowed to occur, or their consequences made worse, by broader systemic pressures, the complexities of a multi-operator system, the constant tension between cost and safety, and the chronic underfunding of mundane maintenance. The verdict isn't either or, it's both and. The specific spark met with conditions that allowed it to become an inferno. For ordinary people, the impact is direct and terrifying. Commuters in Barcelona will look at every wall, every bridge with suspicion. Families across Spain are questioning whether to travel by rail. For the victims' families, life is forever changed. Economically, tourism and business travel confidence could take a hit. Politically, this is a seismic event. The government, now under immense pressure, will face calls for a sweeping, independent inquiry that goes beyond the immediate causes. Watch for several key things: the swiftness and transparency of the investigations, whether they examine systemic factors, and if a major multi-billion euro infrastructure renewal fund is announced. Also, watch the stock prices of private rail operators. The market will deliver its own verdict on perceived risk. So, the central debate stands: tragic coincidence or systemic failure? The evidence points to a dangerous blend of both. Now I want to hear from you. Are you team isolated technical fault or team systemic neglect? What do you think? Drop a 1 in the comments if you believe the official line of isolated incidents. Drop a 2 if you believe this is a sign of deeper infrastructure decay. Share this analysis with someone who needs to see both sides of this critical story. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today for more breaking news and deep dive analysis.